Hello again, everybody. It's again time for another edition of Pro Wrestling Inside and Out. I'm Rodney West, and I'll be hosting today, and we're going to be talking once again about Mid-South Wrestling 1984. We're really celebrating what a tremendous year it was, and it is. And with us tonight, back is the superstar, Bill Dundee. Welcome back.
Rodney West, how you doing? Good night, boys and girls in Radio Land. How are you all doing?
Doing good here. We'd like to welcome everyone. If you got any questions or comments, we'll try to get to as many of them as we possibly can. Last time we had a little bit of conflict, scheduling conflict, but we're back on schedule now. Bill, last time we were here, while you were gone, we were talking about February. And Bill Watts was talking about the big shows that were happening in Oklahoma City. 12,000 people at the Myriad. Tell us about those big houses. Was it everything you expected it to be?
Say that. Was what?
Was it what you expected? I mean, were you surprised by these big crowds? You got 12,000 people at the Myriad in Oklahoma City. And I mean, it was so big that Bill Watts had to make mention of it.
Oh yeah, they were unbelievable. To stand in the room only, white rednecks. It was fun.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And to see the crowd. I mean, they went through and they showed all kinds of footage from the arena. It was outstanding. Now, last time we were here, we covered the Rock and Roll Express and their first appearance live on television. Now, this is after weeks of building them up on the videos. Tell me what your reaction was when the people first saw the Rock and Roll Express at the Irish McNoah Boys Club.
Well, I'd seen them in Memphis, and they were over, so I mean, I kind of knew what the response was going to be, but it was unbelievable. It was, people react, they'd never seen it before.
It was, when you watch it, if you haven't seen it, it was the first appearance against Pat Rose and Jerry Delvisi, and it's just amazing. And it was like, you watched, you saw what you were doing, and it all paid off. And I know Bill Watts and everybody upstairs at the Irish McNeil had to be beside themselves because it was something. And really, if you think about it, with the Rock and Roll Express and Jimmy Cornette, for a few years, they've been playing second banana, sort of the second stringers over with Jarrett. Cornette playing second banana pretty much to Jimmy Hart. The Rock and Roll Express playing second banana to the Fabulous Ones. This really the first time they're being featured, and now as they are being featured, you're seeing all of the success.
Yeah. I mean, Watts talked about the Fabs before them, but I kind of thought this with me. I just said, Bill, I believe the Rock and Roll is a better fit.
Absolutely. And you were right. You're right. Think about this. The Rock and Roll Express got over everywhere they went. The Fabulous Ones left Jarrett Promotions, left Tennessee, and they basically didn't have hardly any success whatsoever. They went to work for Vern Gagne. It didn't really work out. They went to Florida. It still didn't really work out. And I think it's because of that local connection with Jackie Fargo, basically passing the torch from himself to the Fabulous Ones, his team.
That was what brought them over.
Sure. And so when you didn't have that aspect, it made it difficult for them to get over, I think, in the other areas. Whereas the Rock and Roll Express was all them. I mean, all their talent and their expertise. Talk about when you're watching these shows on the internet, YouTube or what have you, there's something that's missing, and that's the local interviews, which I believe were very important in setting the pace, not just for the main generic show, but for the show itself. I mean, this is where all the matches are being made. You know, the whipping might happen on television, but they don't make the match until they get to the Mid-South Television Network. And that seems to be missing in the shows that we're watching now, but I think very important in beginning to advance the storylines pretty much.
Right. And, you know, the people didn't really know where the show was made. It was watched it on TV.
Sure. And you know, that's where, right, because later on we'll see the match where the Midnight Express against Magnum T and Wrestling 2, where they have the 5 lashes. And we don't know that's going on if you watch the generic show. That only happens if you're watching the generic or the personalized interviews for every market. And I think pretty much all the markets ran every other week, right?
Yeah.
Was it just, I think New Orleans just the only ones that ran every week?
Yeah.
New Orleans, I thought so.
Yeah. Oklahoma was every two weeks, but New Orleans every Monday.
Sure. And that means that everything else, New Orleans is kind of separate pretty much for everything else, being that everything else is every other week when you're having to do everything for every week for New Orleans. And that means even if you're in Oklahoma on Saturday and Sunday, you have to be in New Orleans by Monday. And I guess you flew most of the times for that.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us up. Right. I'd like to say hello to Terry. He has joined us tonight. Hey, Terry, welcome back. We're happy that you're here. Let's talk about, now we're getting back. We just talked about February. We're going into March now. And Wrestling 2, I think, is doing a great job. He is putting his all into the situation with him and Magnum TA, which in the end makes Magnum TA really a superstar, as far as I'm concerned. They go back and they redo in this first show, Wrestling 2 and TA, and this is where Wrestling 2 continually slaps TA, and he just refuses to wrestle him. Magnum TA refuses to wrestle him, and the idea is that he's not that he's doing it out of respect for Wrestling 2. So it's funny, while that interview was going, Wrestling 2 really downplays Magnum TA really bad. I mean, really bad. Oh, Gary's starting again. So Wrestling 2 is already starting with TA. And in that, it was funny. Wrestling 2 in these interviews, and it was very subtle. He had put himself on a pedestal above not just Magnum TA, but everybody by referring to, I can beat anybody. With anybody. I can take anybody as a partner and beat this Express, as he didn't know who they were. I thought that was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant on his part. And then later on in the show, in his response to this, 2 actually takes Joe Savoli's place in a match with the Midnight Express, and that didn't work out too well for Wrestling 2, as Magnum TA comes in and has to make the save. But in that match, and if I'm mistaken, let me know. But in that match, it seems like when 2 was against the Midnight Express, that the crowd was for the Midnight Express. Did you catch that?
I don't know, but your mind's in a different place. But yeah, you may just say, "Well, hell, the cheering too."
Yeah, they're already. I mean, the Midnight has done everything to Wrestling 2, but the bottom line, I mean, but what he's doing to Magnum TA is officially turned him, and to the point where now the Midnight Express are being cheered for things they're doing to Wrestling 2 during that match. I noticed that right off the bat. It was quite extraordinary, I thought. Later on in the show, this is the part. This is also the show that when we go to Houston, that Crusher Darso officially changes his name to Crusher Khrushchev. Nikolai Volkov does this big presentation with the red shovel. I thought was pretty good. And then they do the stand there with the Russian national anthem. Of course, now Crusher Darso is now Crusher Khrushchev, and he remains Crusher Khrushchev probably for the next 6 or 7 years, and no matter where he went. I thought that was outstanding. And the national anthem, this that Volkov was doing, finally it's catching on. And when he's starting to do the national anthem, the people are going nuts. And that took a while to get that over, no doubt.
When you started to sing it?
When he started singing the national anthem, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome. Absolutely awesome. And then you're having football matches, football helmet matches with Reed and Neidhart. And this is similar to a coal miner's glove match. Have the helmet on the pole. And in this particular match, Reed gets a hold of the helmet. This is from Houston. And he beats Neidhart relentlessly with it until Terry Taylor comes out and he cleans house. However, for all of Mr. Taylor's trouble, he gets beat up right along with him. So you might want to think about something. Maybe Terry Taylor might want to keep his nose out of the people's business. But, I thought that was fantastic as you're getting ready for that. Then let's talk about, now you're beginning to get ready for the appearance of the Bruise Brothers. And you're going through the same routine with the videos, using that same process that you did with the Rock and Roll Express. And of course, that will happen. I think that's not for this coming Superdome coming up. It's going to be for the next one. We'll talk about that as we get closer to it, exactly what happened between the Bruise Brothers as they were heading to the Mid-South. And I really think that was just a terrible situation. I think that would have really drawn a lot of money, which leads us to the next week. The return, and then the next week, tell me about, this is your big match is going to be the Midnight Express versus the Rock and Roll Express. That's going to be your big matches. However, on the next show, in the March the 8th show, on this episode 235, you actually have the Midnight Express against the Rock and Roll Express for TV. I thought that was a huge surprise. And I think what you were doing is taking people out of their norms. It's been routine that those matches won't happen till later, but give a kind of a sneak preview of what they're going to see later on. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah.
So in that
Memphis, I learned that from Jerry. I guess he did it in Memphis.
Yeah, it works out. Especially it builds you, and then that's in the process of building your ratings as well. Because here's this big match everybody's really been waiting for since the Rock and Roll Express was first seen in the first video, and then here we have it on television. And in that match, Rock and Roll Express hit Bobby Eaton with the double drop kick, and Bobby Eaton kicks out. He kicks out of the double drop kick because, and I think, and I could be wrong, but while this was all happening, the double drop kick, I believe the Russians were supposed to hit the ring and prevent the 1, 2, 3. But if anybody's been to the Irish McNeil's Boys Club, how that worked, the dressing room's on the second level. You had to come out the dressing room, down a walkway, then come down the steps to the ring. So it just looked like that they were supposed to be there before the 1, 2, 3, but they wasn't there, and Bobby ended up kicking out. It was am I wrong about that?
I can't really remember. Nobody ever got mad when they come to the back, so I can't remember what happened.
Well, there was no reason to be mad because they just wasn't there, because it's like I said, it's a long ways from the dressing room to the ring. Even though that building is a small building, it's still, when you have to make that route down to the steps, and then you have to go to that ramp or that walkway to the steps, and then down the steps to the ring, that's a long ways away, really. There he is. There's Terry. How you doing, Terry? There he is. And there's Stanley Nix. We welcome you. Thank you very much for coming. And here's Gary. Yeah. Gary Burry. He says, don't say Wrestling 2 was the best ever again tonight. No, I won't say that because you already have there, Gary. Thank you very much. Lynn Gross, good evening from Memphis. You got some people from Memphis on tonight, Bill. And then we have another Rodney West. We had discovered he was actually Rodney West #1, and I am Rodney West #2. Good evening. Welcome, welcome. And then Bubba Griffin from Pensacola, Florida is in the house. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming. anyway, we got to the point where right at the end of that match, the Russians come in and they cut Ricky Morton's hair, which of course I'm sure leads to matches in the arenas between Volkov and Khrushchev against the Rock and Roll Express. Absolutely fantastic. And then they had this video of this huge crowd in Pine Bluff, Arkansas at the convention center. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It just looked like they were jam packed in that convention center.
Yeah.
Just fantastic. Fantastic. Well, as we continue into the next episode, Wrestling 2 has contended from the day one that he could have beat the Junkyard Dog. He said so several times. In fact, he was willing to put his mask up and he would leave Mid-South if he didn't beat the Junkyard Dog for the North American Championship. Well, apparently, and again, if we had the interviews, we would see in New Orleans that Junkyard Dog had said the same thing, that if he didn't beat Wrestling 2, he would leave Mid-South for 90 days. So that leads to a big match of the New Orleans at the Municipal Auditorium, Wrestling 2 versus the Junkyard Dog. And in that match, Wrestling 2 becomes the North American champion, and the Junkyard Dog hits the road for 90 days. Bill, tell me what the crowd was like when Wrestling 2 beat the Junkyard Dog in New Orleans.
Shock. It was, you know, how the not expected would be like if you did the movies and the bad guy shot John Wayne, who would went into shock.
Was it near riot?
Was it what?
Was it near close to having a riot in New Orleans?
Yeah.
I bet did 2 have problems getting out of the building. I bet he did. I bet he did, because it was a shock, no doubt, and I can just imagine it. We saw some of the video from or just a picture, and of course in that match, Wrestling 2 added a new element to his knee lift, which beat the Junkyard Dog. And you saw when we saw that picture, I mean, the Municipal Auditorium was packed, absolutely packed for that one. And then this is where the Midnight Express finally done what they said they would. They become the Mid-South Tag Team Champions in a match in Lafayette, Louisiana, Municipal Auditorium. And in that match, if the Midnight Express should win the Mid-South Tag Team Championship, then Wrestling 2 and Magnum TA would get 5 lashes. And this is what we were talking about the local interviews being important to the show, pretty much. And in that match, Wrestling 2 walks out on Magnum TA during the match, leaving TA by himself to the Midnight wins, and then TA has to stand there and take 5 lashes, not just for himself, but for Wrestling 2 as well. However, Terry Taylor, good guy that he is, decided that he would take the other 5 lashes instead of TA taking them. He'd take them on his behalf. What a nice person. What a nice person, I have to say. I just think it's funny. Anyway, so Taylor's on. Go ahead.
We were standing watching the match, and then he got to finish it, do the thing, so the lashes is gone. I looked at Taylor, Terry, you want to get over? He said, well, yeah. I said, walk down there and volunteer 5 of them lashes. He said, you're fucking ribbing. I said, no, if you don't want to do it, I can't make you do it, but if you want to get over, go do it. He said, okay.
Well,
the lashes.
Eric Hollier was, I believe I got your name, I hope so. He said he was at the Municipal Auditorium that night. Wow. And there, ladies and gentlemen, the ring set on a stage. And when you saw the video, you think, well, they're in a small place. No, there's more people. They're sitting out in the main auditorium. Place would be packed, no doubt about it. And I've been there many times, sold tickets and everything. Did the ring announcement. It was fantastic. Then here we go. Now we get ready for the big celebration. Here we go. Jim Cornette excited. The Midnight Express excited. Now they're the champions. And Cornette's going to have his party. Bill, tell us about the party, if you will.
The what?
The party with Jim Cornette.
We had the cake. Is that where they put his face in the cake?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the payoff on that. He was going to cut the cake and the baby face run out and grabbed it.
Rock and Roll Express come out there, shoved his face down yes, shoved his face down. The people went nuts. Bill Watson and Boyd Pierce was at the desk. They were laughing. It was a big time. Cornette was just brilliant. He was just brilliant in this. Just fantastic. And then comes the match with the return of Jim Duggan. Now, previously, we remember that the Russians had hurt Jim Duggan with the Coal Miners Club. And when Duggan comes back, he comes back in a big whirlwind because the Russians are doubling up on Terry Taylor and basically taking in and having a tug of war with Terry Taylor's head in that rope. When Jim Duggan comes out with that 2x4 and lets them have it. And the people just go nuts. I mean, absolutely nuts when Jim Duggan returns. They were talking about Duggan being in Florida for a while. And apparently he was wrestling a little differently in Florida. But then he comes back, and I'm telling you, when he comes down those steps, the people of the Irish McNeil Boys Club, I mean, they were on fire. I mean, it was something to behold. What do you think about Jim Duggan?
Yeah, he was over like the Southern guy.
Yes.
After we got done with him, and Ross had him over.
Yeah. It's no doubt that the injury was very helpful in getting ready for him to come back, and he did so in a big way. The people, just like I said, went nuts from the beginning, just when he returns. And he does a great interview. I mean, there's no better person doing an interview than Jim Duggan. Really, he was just fantastic. We go through a couple of more matches. In the final moments of the TV, this is where Bill Watts decides they're going to re-show the party with Jim Cornette getting his face shoved down in the cake. And when they come back, Cornette and Jim Ross, Cornette and Jim Ross are having an argument. Cornette's not happy about that being reshowed. It was bad enough the first time, is what he said. And he's sick and tired of this. He said he's going to sue Jim Ross. He's going to sue Oral Link. He's going to sue all the people if he had their names in here. And then Bill Watts comes in and he says, look, none of these people are responsible. I'm the president of the Mid-South Sports. I'm the one that told them to replay this. So if you're going to sue anybody, you can sue me. Well, the Cornette gets all all upset. He said, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to have my mother send a check down here and buy this company, and I'm going to fire you. No, I'm not going to fire you. I'm going to put you out putting the ring up or cleaning up the building. And most of all, what I'm going to do is have your son selling Midnight Express T-shirts. And then that's when Bill Watts decided that he'd had enough. And he told Cornette, and just brilliantly grabs a hold of Cornette's hand and tells him, don't you ever say anything about my family. You can say what you want about me, but don't you ever say anything about my family. And he said, now, when I'm getting to the point where I'm no longer talking, when I quit talking, I'm going to become physical. And we know you're not physical in any way, shape, or form. So he said, let me tell you what I'm going to do. Now, I've given you 2 chances here. I'm going to walk away. Now, my suggestion to you is let me walk away. Cornette, Bill Watts takes and turns and walks away, starts to walk away. Cornette touches him on the shoulder. And when he does, Bill Watts turns around, slaps him. And what I refer to as the slap heard round the world, and the crowd goes nuts.
Yeah.
That was, again, just has to be one of the big payoffs. I mean, Cornette for weeks had been antagonizing Watts. Watts had been, like Gary was saying, was calling Cornette a sissy, which is leading up to what's coming up shortly. Just an amazing time. What did you tell Cornette, when he was going back out there? What did you tell him?
Before the slap or after the slap?
Before the slap.
I said, he's going to slap you. He said, oh, yeah. I said, yeah. He's real stiff. He said, I don't have real money. So he was all fired up for it.
Yeah.
Even when I got off the scaffold, he got all fired up for that. Remember that deal?
Yeah. Well, it was fantastic. As Eric Holliner said, he said that Cornette and Watts was money. Absolutely. Absolutely. And especially with this. I mean, you didn't really see it coming with Watts getting involved. And when Bill Watts hauls off and slaps Cornette, it really shocked. Like you were saying, you're shocking the people. Wrestling 2, beating the Junkyard Dog, you shock the people. Bill Watts slapping Cornette. I mean, again, you shock the people. Amazing, absolutely amazing stuff. And then that, of course, ends the show, and it brings us to the next show, which is episode 237, and this is on March the 22nd. And we notice when the show comes on that Boyd Pierce is not his energetic self, and then Jim Ross takes over and explains that earlier Bill Watts was doing an interview with both Butch Reed and Terry Taylor as they were coming up on the next match of the Mid-South Television Tournament. And after the interview with Terry Taylor came the interview with Butch Reed. And this is where Mr. Cornette has decided that he wants to take things into his own hand and confront. Well, not really confront. He stayed far away from Bill Watts and distracted him long enough for Bobby and Dennis to come in. And I mean, they did a number on Bill Watts. And again, I think, shocking, absolutely shocking the people that were watching it. Eric Hollier, he said that when Bill Watts slapped Cornette, it sounded like a shotgun going off. And it did. I mean, like I said, it was the slap heard around the world. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. But anyway, after that, Cornette, the Midnight Express, jumping Bill Watts. And you could tell, I mean, it really shook the people up in the Irish McNeil Boys Club. And that's all setting up for the big show coming up at the Superdome. Just extraordinary. Now, the Superdome events happen how many times a year, Bill?
About 4.
About 4 times. So they basically were. Can you imagine? Just think about this. Could you imagine if you had pay-per-view back then? What kind of response it would be with these shows?
Oh, unbelievable! But we didn't have them.
Yeah, most of the time, the Superdomes were on Saturday, so it allowed people to travel all over, and they did to see these shows. They were absolutely. Larry Brock, thank you very much. I'm trying my best here, and we're trying to hold in. We thank you very much for it. Let me ask you something. As we get ready to close out for this show, it seemed like you had everything going your way. Midnight was in perfect position. You're also planning for the future Superdome, which was 6 months away with the Bruise Brothers. I mean, you've done a lot of planning. It really is apparent, which I think is important to know what you're doing 3, 6 months, even a year out, and you had your ducks in a row, no doubt.
Yeah, but I haven't seen a lot of that stuff work in Memphis.
Sure.
So you just kind of change the players. You know what I mean?
Right. And I, as I said before, and I think I told you yesterday, I really think. I mean, I know you patterned it after Jarrett Promotions and what they were doing in Memphis. But I really think at this point you had surpassed them. I really do, because I mean it's just amazing what was happening, and this is not a usual. I mean, this is not a usual thing here. This is an exception to the rule, really, and the amazing business that's taking place in the Mid-South, and you're leading it all. And my hat's off to you, Cornette, and the Rock and Roll Express, Bobby and Dennis. And the whole crew, Jim Ross, the whole crew.
Oh, we had a hell of a crew. I mean, Buddy Landell. I mean, he was a big part of it too.
Sure, absolutely. And you're getting ready with Reed and Landell. And at this point, it looked like you could basically, and this is what I've talked about before, being in a sweet spot where you could shake up or rearrange the crowd, the crew any way, match them up any way, and have a good card. and draw a house. I mean, you could have Reed and Landell against the Rock and Roll Express. You could have the Russians against the Rock and Roll Express. You could have had the Midnight against the Rock and Roll Express, or the Midnight against TA and Taylor and Duggan. And I mean, it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Gary Burry was saying that at this point, at one point, Mid-South had the best talent in the country. No question about it. No question about it. Not just the best talent, but the best of everything. The best putting the matches together. Best in really putting the TVs together, laying everything out. Just absolute, as far as I'm concerned, just perfect. Just absolutely perfect. All right, Eric has said not a slight on Memphis, but the crew in Mid-South were light years ahead, and I agree. I absolutely agree with that, because right about this time, if I'm not mistaken, Jarrett about the summer was beginning to hurt and was accusing you, Bill, of stealing all of his talent.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's certainly
when he told Bill Watts to take me to Louisiana. Watts came up, talked to him in the office, and they talked about this guy and that guy and all of it. So then Bill, Jerry's, Bill, you need to talk to that little son of a bitch. See if he'll come book it for you. So he looks over at me and he said, "Hey, stud, you want me to book it?" And yeah. So then, after that goes, "Well, we need a crew." He said, "Well, you think it?" And Charlie Jarrett was all helping. He said, "Yeah, we'll, whoever you want." I said, "Okay." He had the snacks and Jimmy Hart, and he thought he was on fire.
Right. Well, if I'm not mistaken, in May of that year, the Fabulous Ones actually leave. And then they have the new Fabulous Ones with Eddie Gilbert and Tommy Rich. And I witnessed. Say again?
That never really got over.
No.
Didn't buy that.
No. Anytime you try to redo something, it never works out. That's been a mistake made over and over again. You'd think somebody would learn by now, but by the end, yeah, it wasn't going to work. New Fabulous Ones, or even later on the new creation of the Rock and Roll Express with Al Perez and Wendell Cooley didn't work out too good either. So it's just the way it works. It's just sometimes things are just for that moment. And it just can't be redone, no doubt about it. Well, as we come back, ladies and gentlemen, we want to say thank you for everyone for joining us here this evening. We're going to be going into April. We're going to be seeing Bill Watts come back, and he will be announcing. He'll make his comeback. And let's see, we got one more show. We got Bill Watts and his return and his rebuttal to Mr. Cornette and them attacking him. Well, in this one, Bill Watts is now going to try to find a partner, because he said, now I'm going to try to, I can't find Cornette because his mother will just pay the fine. I know I can beat him. That's not a great feat. So what can I do? I've got to humiliate him. Well, his first thing he's got to do is got to find himself a partner. The first one he went to was the Junkyard Dog, who cannot return to the Mid-South because he lost the 90-day loser league town match. But the Junkyard Dog has another idea. He has a friend of his called Stagger Lee. And Stagger Lee had been there. In fact, he was there in 1982 when the Junkyard Dog was gone and faced against Ted DiBiase and supplies Mr. DiBiase. In that match now, so now we've got Bill Watts. He has his partner with Stagger Lee, and they're going to be heading into the Superdome with one last match. It's called the Last Stampede, as they face the Midnight Express. And as Bill Watts says, he can't do anything to him. He can't find him. He knows he can beat him up. So what he's got to do is humiliate him. And in this match, if Bill Watts and the Stagger Lee wins, Cornette gets to wear the dress. And that's something. Tell me how you come up with that, Bill.
The what?
With Cornette being in the dress. That was for the Superdome.
Yeah, that was Bill Watts wanting to do that.
Yeah.
I'll go get Bill. Like you said, he said, Cornette, everybody knows I kicked your ass. ain't humiliated. You wear a dress or something like that. Jimmy said, well, okay.
Well,
what's his angle?
Well, Watts, he's one of the smartest people in the business, and it was a brilliant idea. It's a brilliant idea. Eric was going to ask you about the which we talked before about those. He was asking at the time if he remembered if the tapes were being bicycled at the time, and I do believe they were. I don't think they changed that till about the summer, maybe the fall, before they got the tapes caught back up, if I'm not mistaken. Because you were having to fight the bicycling of all those tapes, and I think as we said before, by the time some of the tapes got around, some of the talents are already gone. So, do you remember the bicycling of the tapes?
Well, I never really had much to do with that part, so I remember we all talked about.
Right. Right.
We bicycled the one in the Memphis ceremony west of Louisville, Mexico, Kentucky, and Tupelo, Mississippi. And that was about it. So it wasn't like you go to Ohio and shit like that. Bill took lots of big territory.
Right. Huge. What was it, like 16 markets he had? 2, 3, 4, what super ones? You got Houston, New Orleans, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Shreveport, big markets, Jackson, Mississippi. Just fantastic. Just big territory. Well, right now, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of March, and we're getting ready for the Superdome Wrestling Extravaganza, which we will cover in detail next week as we cover the month of April, as we get ready for the big one, the Superdome Wrestling Extravaganza. And it's already stacking up to be one big one with Bill Watts, Stagger Lee against the Midnight Express. Bill, I want to say thank you for being back with us. Hopefully be back again next week. Will you be back with us next week?
Again next week.
All right, we'll be here next week. And as always, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us here this evening as we celebrate 1984 Mid-South Wrestling. Again, ladies and gentlemen, for Bill Dundee, I'm Rodney West, and we'll see you on the next Pro Wrestling Inside and Out.